January 26, 2026. Formula One begins its new era. But what was supposed to be a quiet shakedown turned into something much bigger. 7 teams hit the track. 4 didn't even show up. And those who didn't all make it back to the pits. No official timing. No broadcast. Just filtered photos, leaked lap times, and whispers. Because what really happened on day 1 was never meant to be seen. And that's exactly why it matters. January 26th wasn't supposed to be a big day. It was labeled a shakedown. A non-televised, non-competitive session where teams could quietly test systems, check cooling flows, and keep their secrets safe. But from the moment the pit lane opened in Barcelona, something felt off. Because while 7 teams ran cars, 4 didn't even show up. And that alone sent a ripple through the paddock. Not because missing the first test is illegal, it isn't. But because no one skips a debut unless they absolutely have to. Ferrari's absence was loud. McLaren's was unexplained. Aston Martin went silent. And Williams, a team that's historically desperate for track time, stayed in the shadows. Which raised one question no one officially answered. What's really going on behind those closed factory doors? For the teams that did run, media access was tightly controlled. Only 12 official images were released per team. Selected, curated, and filtered through internal media departments. Where this gets interesting. Because if these teams were just gathering data, why does it already feel like someone's trying to shape the narrative? A 1 minute and 18.835 seconds shouldn't mean anything. Not in January. Not on cold tarmac. Not with reduced power, low grip, and a rookie at the wheel. But that number, from Hadjar, in the Red Bull, echoed through the paddock harder than anyone expected. Because unofficial or not, that lap sent a signal. Not just about Red Bull's car, but about how prepared they are. While other teams were running slow, or not at all, Red Bull let a junior driver push. And whether the time was real or not, it didn't matter. They looked fast, and everyone noticed. Especially Mercedes. Kimi Antonelli's best lap? A 1 minute and 20.7 seconds, nearly 2 seconds off the pace. Now, Mercedes insists they weren't chasing lap time. And maybe that's true. But behind closed doors, comparisons are always being made. And no matter how much fuel you carry, 2 seconds is 2 seconds. Even Audi, who ran 3rd most laps, couldn't break into the 1:19s. Alpine had a messy session, with 1 stoppage. Haas ran a clean test, but didn't trouble the top of the sheet. So when Hadjar popped up with that 1:18, even if it was a low-fuel glory run, it forced a recalibration. Because if that's what Red Bull can do on day 1, what does it look like when they turn everything on? And that's the problem. The timing may not be official. The conditions may not be equal. But perception matters. And right now, Red Bull looks like the only team ready to race. 4 teams didn't turn a single lap. And in a test this limited, with no broadcast, no fans, and barely any press, choosing not to run isn't just a scheduling decision. It's a message. Ferrari didn't appear. Not even for a systems check. Officially, the SF20 SIXS debut wasn't planned until later in the week. But that hasn't stopped speculation. Because if Red Bull could log 44 laps on day 1, why was Ferrari nowhere? Insiders suggest their power unit program is ahead of schedule. But their Aero platform isn't. There are still balance issues with the pushrod front suspension. And some of the bodywork revisions have reportedly triggered cooling inconsistencies. In short, the car exists. But the package still isn't ready to be seen. McLaren's absence was quieter. No press release, no explanation. Just silence. And when a team that finished 2025 so strongly goes dark like that, people start to wonder. Is it strategic? Or is there a problem? Aston Martin also skipped. Not unusual for them, but still surprising. Their development plan has been conservative since mid-2025. But there's talk of software issues with energy deployment. And if your car isn't talking to itself properly, you don't put it on track where the whole paddock can see. And then there's Williams. The team that, historically, uses every second of testing just to survive. Their no-show was unexpected and concerning. Sources suggest they're still finalizing engine installation and haven't validated full hybrid integration. When 4 teams disappear on day 1, it stops being a coincidence and starts looking like a warning. In a regulatory reset this big, you'd expect the FIA to be front and center, setting boundaries, clarifying intent, monitoring every loophole before it becomes a political nightmare. Instead, they've gone quiet. No public comment about day 1. No statements about hybrid performance windows. No clarification on the battery discharge rules. Which, by the way, remain one of the most misunderstood aspects of the 2026 regs. And that silence is starting to make people nervous. Because everyone remembers 2019, when Ferrari ran a power unit that was technically compliant, but eventually triggered secret agreements with the FIA. Or 2020, when Mercedes showed up with DAS, and the rulebook couldn't catch up fast enough. This year feels similar. Red Bull shows up early, looks fast, doesn't say a word. Meanwhile, other teams hold back, afraid of showing too much or revealing systems that haven't been cleared yet. What's worse is that the FIA isn't offering transparency. They haven't clarified what constitutes over-harvesting. They haven't explained the limits of energy deployment under lift and coast scenarios. And in a formula where half the power now comes from hybrid systems, those aren't small questions. Those are race-defining technicalities. And here's where it gets risky. If one team interprets a rule aggressively, and it works, they don't just gain time. They gain political leverage. Because now, changing the rule would be seen as targeting. That's what's at stake. Not just pace, but position. And the longer the FIA stays silent, the more control it surrenders to the teams willing to speak last and act first. Red Bull looked fast. But that wasn't the most important thing they showed. They looked in control. No reliability issues. No rushed floor changes. No last-minute shutdowns. Just quiet laps, and a headline time that was too fast to ignore. Mercedes, on the other hand, stayed under the radar. Antonelli ran cleanly, logged decent mileage, and didn't chase lap time. But there was something missing. They didn't push. They didn't provoke. And when you're in a new regulation cycle, that kind of restraint can be either smart or a sign you're not ready yet. Audi ran the third most laps, which sounds good on paper. But their day ended early. 27 laps, then silence. No details. No interviews. Just a quiet pack-up and a few internal photos. It's not failure, but it's not confidence either. Alpine, by contrast, had a rough outing. Electrical issues. A suspected calibration fault. A stoppage on track. The car returned to the garage, but never came back out. That's the kind of day one disruption that can cascade into a week of delays. Haas ran the cleanest program outside of Red Bull. 42 laps, no major issues, and a stable baseline. But that stability came at the cost of performance. They weren't fast. And in a season where every team is rewriting their entire energy deployment strategy, you can't afford to start safe and stay slow. Then there's the invisible group: Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, Williams. No data. No footage. No context. And that absence? It's starting to feel heavy. Because while it's easy to hide on day one, you can't hide forever. And when the second test begins, if those cars show up late, incomplete, or untested, it might already be too late to catch up. The first day of testing didn't give us answers. It gave us gaps. Gaps in performance. Gaps in transparency. And gaps in confidence. We didn't see full runs. We didn't hear sector analysis. We didn't even hear from most of the drivers. What we got instead were curated photos, selective lap times, and long stretches of silence. And in a season where every team is balancing a new hybrid formula, new cooling systems, new weight targets, and new energy maps, that silence might be the loudest warning of all. Because some of these teams aren't just hiding performance, they're hiding problems. And others, like Red Bull, might already be turning that silence into control. It's not about being first. It's about being confident enough to show your hand before anyone else is ready. That's what Red Bull did. And that's why the rest of the grid now finds itself playing catch-up, whether they want to admit it or not. But here's the real danger. What happens if the FIA doesn't step in? What if the teams struggling now stay quiet until it's too late? And what if the fastest car on day one wasn't even close to showing its full potential? Because if that's true, then the 2026 season may have already started, and most of the grid never even heard the lights go out.